As Theatre and Drama Network, I would like to extend our warmest greetings to all participants and to our dear professor, Dr. Gülşen Sayın. How can I describe Gülşen Sayın? She's kind of the mirror to us. Her works, her film studies, her translations, her drama contributions to the area. They're all precious. They're all precious to us. So I would like to end my introduction in this point, and I would like to give the scene yours, Professor. Can you hear me, Professor? Welcome again.
Welcome. Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, the scene is yours, dear Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really, I'd like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to their drama sessions. I've been following the conferences of the TDN. I love them very much. Really, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much indeed. Today, my title is Rewriting the Playboy of the Western World, Haldun The Ballad of Ali of Keshan. I want to say a few words about my title because I use the term rewriting because it's an umbrella term as it corresponds to other terms like adaptation, appropriation, transplantation, translocation, relocation, relocution, acculturation, transculturation, and so on. So I just preferred using the term rewriting to cover all of them. So throughout my paper, I'll be using these terms interchangeably. Thanks to transcultural interactions, we have these terms and concepts because texts may be discussed, appreciated, and even reproduced in so many ways at different times in different geographies. Theoretically, these concepts emphasize a new life for a source text in a different setting and culture, but avoid a slavish imitation of an original. The theory insists on a culturally specific, highly original contribution to the indigenous theater. I'm talking in the context of drama. Rewritings should revitalize and illuminate the source in new ways, reimagining rather than being dependent on a source text. The new play should be meaningfully expressive in its new setting, new locality, and should be singing to its new audience. As Melissa Shira puts it, rewriting or adaptation, I quote, becomes an act of transcendence which moves beyond one-dimensional or derivative mimesis. Ideally, it should be a dynamic two-way process of expression where the original play offers insights into the creative impulses of the adapter dramatist and the new setting, while the new play reveals latent mysteries in the familiar, unquote. In the context of adaptation, one of the early pioneers of the theory, Linda Hutchon, insists that a rewriting is a derivation that is not derivative, a work that is second without being secondary, unquote. The quotation is going on. It is its own palimpsestic thing, unquote. Haldun Taner's rewriting or adaptation or appropriation of the Playboy of the Western World to a Turkish locality and cultural milieu transforms Singh's play into distinctly Turkish theater. everything is reinterpreted and modified to reflect a Turkish reality. The result is a culturally specific and highly original contribution to Turkish theater. So in this paper, I will look at the ways in which Haldun Taner has rewritten or transplanted things, the Playboy of the Western world, into a Turkish context in the Ballad of Ali of Keshan, taking the Turkish historical, social, and political context of the 1950s and 60s in the background. The 1950s and the 60s in Turkey were the crucial decades of social and political turning points that witnessed rapid industrialization and urbanization on the one side, and on the other side, the birth of a new capitalistic economy and ideology leading to a transition from agricultural to industrial society. In the Turkish theater, when we look at the Turkish theater in the 1950s and 60s, we see that still the national Turkish drama is painfully trying to emerge. And Haldun Taner is aware of the fact that there is no 100% a national Turkish drama. And borrowing from the works of the founders of Irish national drama as a model for a national theater in Turkey was first suggested by Professor Saffet Korkut of Ankara University in his scholarly book İrlanda Milli Tiyatrosu'nu kuranlar ve dramlarından numuneler. The founders of Irish national drama and examples from their plays. This book was published in 1943. Presenting the Irish cultural revival in the forefront, the book explores not only the major principles of Irish national drama and the dramatists like Yeats, Lady Gregory, Synge, and O'Casey, but it also points to some similarities between the social and political experiences of Irish and Turkish societies. Professor Korkut, also the Turkish translator of Synge's The Playboy of the Western World and The Shadow of the Glen, points out the success of Irish national drama and shows it as a role model to found a national theater in Turkey. Saffet Korkut states that, let's just have a look at the quotation. When we look at the quotation starts with, the slide starts with, when we look at. Yes. When we look at Ireland's literary history, we see that, like us, until the end of the 19th century, they had no national drama and a substantial theatre to represent Ireland. However, a dramatic movement that came into being at the end of the 19th century rapidly developed, swiftly passing through the phases that our theatre is in now, and produced internationally well-known original plays that embrace the whole world and humanity. I find it noteworthy that while giving a war of independence to liberate the country and its future against an imperialist enemy, Irish playwrights used the theatre as the most functional tool for promoting unity and solidarity among Irish people. For our national drama, which is in the making, I think we can benefit from the ideologues of Irish national drama. Although this book was published in 1943, Haldun Taner, a scholar who taught at Ankara University Faculty of Languages, History and Geography in the late 50s, knew about this book, of course. In 1966, Professor Cevat Çapan of Istanbul University published İrlanda Tiyatrosu'nda Gerçekçilik, Realism in Irish Drama, another scholarly book that discusses the plays of Yeats, Lady Gregory, Singh, and O'Casey against the social, political, and historical background of Ireland in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Like Professor Corkut, Professor Chapman points to the Irish revivalist movement as the right path for the construction of a national drama in Turkey. These academic works were followed in later decades by translations and stage performances of the plays written by the major figures of the Irish national dramatic movement. During Taner's lifetime, Brendan Behan's The Hostage was translated into Turkish as Gizli Ordu, the Secret Army, to be performed by Ankara Art Theatre in the 1963-64 theatre season. And the Ballad of Ali of Keshan was first performed in Turkey in 1964. In 1965, O'Casey's Juno and the Peacock was translated into Turkish as Dünyanın Düzeni, The Order of the World, by Professor İrfan Şahinbaş of Ankara University, and published by the Turkish Ministry of National Education Publishing House. In 1966, Singh's The Playboy of the Western World was translated into Turkish as Baba Yiğit, Brave Fellow, by Saffet Korkut, and published by, again, the Turkish Ministry of National Education Publishing House. So, Haldun Taner didn't read the Turkish translation of the play because it was translated in 1966. The play, Keshan Ali, was performed in 1964. Taner might have read Singh's The Playboy of the Western World from its French translation, Maurice Bourgeois' Le Balladin de Monde Occidental, because, Haldun Taner is a graduate of a French medium high school, Galatasaray Lisesi, so he's fluent in French. He might have read the French translation, or he might have watched the Berliner Ensemble adaptation of Singh's play in 1956 when he was living in Heidelberg, Germany. Haldun Taner is very fluent in German because he's a graduate of Istanbul University, the Department of German Language and Literature. Haldun Taner was very much aware of the lack of a national theater in Turkey, dealing with the indigenous life of the local people. He might have wanted to formulate a national theater the way the Irish national dramatists managed at the turn of the 20th century. In his plays, in Taner's plays, like Singh, he dealt with the effects of social, political, and cultural changes on the individual, focusing on the inner conflicts of the characters and presenting these inner dilemmas as the side effects of the social, political, and cultural changes in Turkey. Technically, Taner very skillfully used characteristics of traditional non-illusionistic Turkish theater forms such as truat and ortoyunu. He used these indigenous performance forms as Brechtian alienation effects, as we see in the Ballad. In the Ballad, as we see in the ortoyunu, the characters are all types and the structure of the play is loose. The action on the stage is often interrupted either by songs with social and political content or by direct addresses to the audience, and there is no place for emotionalism. Also, there is a prologue and an epilogue at the end of the play, and in the epilogue, the moral of the play is reported. Characters directly address the audience, and finally, the audience is often reminded that what they are watching is just a play. In the Ballad of Ali of Keshan, the setting, plot, and characters are transposed to a slum area in Istanbul, Sinekli'da, Fly Mountain, in the early 1960s, against the social and political background of the post-coup in 1960. As a rewriting, transposition, or adaptation, the most creative intervention with the ballad is the representation of the outsider or the intruder, Christy Mechen, as Ali, a highly politicized figure who migrated from Keshan to Istanbul in search of a good job and living conditions. Like Christy Mechen, Ali is an asylum seeker, and like Christy, he has a story to back up his migrant position in Istanbul. Like Christy again, he's searching for who he is outside his hometown. Together with Ali of Keshan, Taner depicts the life of many characters of different ethnicities and classes coming from different parts of Turkey to Istanbul, to Sinekli'da, in search of better jobs and living conditions again. However, their hope turns to frustration and alienation as the result of many conflicts with both local socialities and urban lifestyle, as well as new social norms and freedoms that the 1960 coup has initiated in Turkey. In the prologue, the chorus in fact includes the settlers of Sinekli'da, the butchers, the midwives, everybody. Taner created the chorus out of these settlers. And in the prologue, the chorus introduces the setting, Fly Mountain, as follows. Sinekli'da burası, şehre tepeden bakar. Ama şehir Irak'ta, masallardaki kadar. Her cins insan var burada. Çalışkanı, tembeli. Dört bucaktan gelmişler. Hırlı, hırsız, serseri. Lazı, Kürdü, Pamağı, Maraşlısı, Vanlısı, Erzincanlı, Kemahlı, hepsi kader yoldaşı. The English translation belongs to Nüvit Özdoğru, and the English translation of the play was published in 1970 by the International Theatre Institute National Center of Turkey. Taner depicts Istanbul as the microcosm of rapidly changing country that is getting industrialized, irregularly urbanized, more cosmopolitan, chaotic, lawless. Lawless is the key word. Lawless as Mayo in Singh's play, and corrupted and physically ugly. As the description of the setting shows, the shanty town, Sinekli'da, its inhabitants, their mentality and morality remind us of the Mayoites, the regular visitors of, quote from Singh's play, a very rough and untidy shebeen near a village on a wild coast of Mayo, unquote. And the inhabitants of Sinekli'da remind us of the irregular inhabitants of the ugly shebeen in Mayo, like Danson Sullivan, who, quote from Singh's play, who knocked the eye from a pillar, the mad Mavrinians who were driven from California and they lost in their wits, Marcus Quinn, who got 6 months for maiming youths, and he a great warrant to tell stories of Holy Island till he'd have the old women shedding down tears about their feet, unquote. So whatever Aaron meant to sing, Istanbul shanty towns meant the same to Taner. As Christopher Murray states in the context of the Playboy of the Western world, Aran Islands presented, quote, the coexistence of death and endurance, material hardship and spiritual wonder, desolation and transcendence, unquote. And politically, Aran was Singh's real social model. It gave him the standard by which to measure the flaws in Irish rural life. Similarly, Sineklida, a shanty town in central Istanbul, an amalgam of poverty and endurance, urbanity and rurality, hope and frustration, gave Taner the standard by which to measure the evils and weaknesses in the Turkish urban life in the early 1960s. In Fly Mountain, men are between jobs and women either clean public toilets, or if they are lucky enough, they are employed by wealthy families as handmaids. Both men and women are frustrated as this big city failed to meet their expectations. As one of the shantytown dwellers, Niyazi, says, the next slide, yes. İşsiz çoğu erkekler, kahvelerde pinekler, ırgat olur bazen, amelelik ederler. Eventually, Fly Mountain, Sineklida, with its socially and economically frustrated people and sleazy slums and slum landlords at the center, has echoes from Singh's village on the wild coast of Mayo, where crime is ubiquitous. The following words of the chorus are a wonderful example of acculturation or transculturation or transplantation or appropriation. Devlet bizle uğraşır. The next slide, please. Devlet bizle uğraşır, polis bizle hırlaşır, ağlar leş kargası sus parası sızdırır. Singh's village on a wild coast of Mayo is, as we know, safe enough for a criminal because it is lawless, because, quote from the play, the peelers in this place is decent, drafty poor fellows, wouldn't touch a cur dog and not give warning in the dead of night. So, just like Mayo, just like this town in the coast of Mayo, shanty town is Sineklida is as lawless. As Declan Kybert interprets, quote, such a people desperately need a hero. Of course, he talks in the context of Irish culture. Such a people desperately need a hero who can bring their instincts to violence into a single clear focus, a hero, moreover, whom they can convert into a scapegoat, onto whom may be visited any troublesome, violent tendencies that are still unfulfilled, unquote. This interpretation of the Mayoites certainly comprises the inhabitants of Fly Mountain and its inner dynamics. Ali of Keshan is in love with Zilha, but is sent to prison for murdering Zilha's uncle, Mehmet the Mad, Chamur Mehmet, a crime that has not committed. Just like Christy Mahan, Ali hasn't committed this crime. But he's sent to prison. To survive among the vicious criminals in prison, Ali disguises himself, like Christy Mahan in Singh's play, as a brutal murderer. The longer Ali stays in prison, the more he impersonates the characteristics of a brutal murderer and tells them flamboyantly how he has murdered the much hated person of the shantytown, Mehmet the Mad, and so becomes a legendary hero of this fake story of his own. So again, we see the power of a lie in inverted commas. A character in the prologue introduces Ali as a character who is handsome, fearless, audacious, divine, kingly and gracious, dogged, reckless, tenacious. Enemies called him ferocious. So the more Ali boasts about the fake murder, the more he is respected by everybody in the shanty town and in the jail. Ali, the loser of the lonesome East and the underdog of a slum area of a big city, likes his new position and reputation now. Like Mr. Mehan, who quickly evaluates his past and present life and says, "Till I'm thinking this night, wasn't I a foolish fellow not to kill my father in the years gone by?" This is from Singh's play. Ali's personality and moral values change with the power of a lie, just like Christie's. Can we have a look at the next slide? Not this one. Okay, I'll come to that. Ali says, now quotation from Ali, "When you are an honest man and behave like a human being in this world, you are the laughing stock of everyone. When you are a bully and a killer, you are respected and held in high esteem. The legend about me started out from this lie." In another quotation, Ali says, "In life, you will either be a coward and get trampled, or you'll be the one on top and trample other bastards. There is no other alternative." So those flamboyant sentences of Ali go parallel with Christy Mehan's "I'm thinking this night, wasn't I a foolish fellow not to kill my father in the years gone by?" So after 4 years, thanks to a general amnesty, Ali gets out of prison, goes back to Fly Mountain, and is given a hero welcome by the shanty people. Now, people, a quotation from the text, "People are chanting." Is there a quotation like this? Yes, people are chanting, "Long live Ali of Keshan, the lion of lions. You can tell a man from his neck. Just look at that neck. The nation is proud of you." The crowd marches in, carrying Ali on their shoulders. A newspaper man is walking backward with a camera in his hands, the flash of the bulb. This communal manifestation of love and respect scene closely parallels the sequence in Singh's play when the Mayoites, having learned that Christy is the murderer of his own father, carry him on their shoulders during the celebrations of his spectacular success in the sports games. Both communities hold criminals in high esteem. Here is the parallel scene in the Playboy. A great burst of, this slide. A great burst of cheering outside some way off. "He is the champion of the world. That lad is the wonder of the Western world." Voices. "There you are, good jumper, grand leopard, darling boy. He is the racer. Bear him on, will you?" So this is a very parallel scene. The fake criminals are respected and loved by common people. Moreover, in Sinekli'da, there is a mythical story around. People believe that when Ali was born, his mother washed him in magical water to prevent him from death, and thus his body is immune to bullets and nobody can kill him. Myth making is another need for both societies here. Ali becomes actually is like hero now. Creating myths and mythical heroes is the need of the people who are ignored, neglected, exploited, or excluded by the system. They need a hero or a scapegoat to defend or protect themselves against a corrupted system. However, while Christie murders his father for his own welfare, Ali kills Mehmet Dimad for the welfare of the people living in Fly Mountain. While Christie brings joy and happiness to the village, Ali brings order to the shanty town as he is elected the local chief of the neighborhood, Muhtar. While Christie becomes the playboy of the Western world, Ali becomes a politician of the Western world and promises to reform the shanty town. This is a brilliant example of Taner's deviation from the text and acculturation or rewriting or transculturation. Let's see what Ali does as a politician. Nuri speaks. Nuri's quotation, yes. He directly speaks to the audience. Brother Ali brought quiet and order to Fly Mountain within a month after he took office. First of all, he had the proposed law about tearing down the shanty towns squashed. He's been taking tribute, hush money, and all that, but with moderation. This reflects the Turkish sense of humor, very culture-specific humor. He's been taking tribute, hush money, and all that, just like the other corrupt politicians, but with moderation. He's modest. How can you balance the budget without taxes? In this day and age, even the government can't do without foreign aid. This foreign aid, this is a reference to the American aid in the 1960s, you know, those milks and other things when we were all elementary, I mean, when I was an elementary school student. First, yes, Ali fights against the construction companies that tear down the shanty town to construct new apartment blocks and against the corrupted political parties that exploit the shanty town people. However, later on, he becomes part of the corrupted system and starts getting tributes and extra taxes from people. As one of the shantytown dwellers protests, quote, "Tribute is dead, long live tribute, nothing has changed," unquote. This is the most distinctive feature of Taner's play, revealing the culture-specific problems. While Singh diagnosed and dramatized the intimate connections between the political and economic discontents, Taner is overtly political and also more critical of the corrupted social system that does not treat every citizen fairly and equally. In the meantime, Zilha, Ali's lover, rejects Ali. Here, Zilha can be associated with Pidgin. She rejects Ali because he is the murderer of her uncle and accepts the proposal of the son of a very rich and influential family, the Honorals. Zilha now dreams about a handsome young man who will take her away from Fly Mountain. Now, let's remember the opening scene of the Playboy. Pidgin is just making a list. She's getting married, and the things that she will use in her wedding, a pair of lace boots and a hat, blah, blah, blah. She's dreaming at the beginning of the play. Pidgin is dreaming about a beautiful life, just like Zilha. Zilha wants to be rich and powerful and to get revenge on Ali. This wealthy young man, the son of the honorans, is Bülent. Bülent can be associated with Shan Kyo in Singh's play. Bülent, and just like Shan Kyo in Singh's play, he is a winny, diffident, and submissive person. While Shan Kyo submits to the church, Bülent submits to his rich father's dirty plots. While Zilha doesn't know that Bülent is already married, but Bülent is already married, by the way, and he is planning a fake marriage because his wife Ahsan, Bülent's wife Ahsan, ran away. She left him, and Zilha physically is alike, very much alike with Ahsan. So the family, this rich, prestigious family, doesn't want to lose their prestige. They need a wife for Bülent, and Zilha becomes Bülent's wife. The Onaran family, of course, one of the state-supported economic elites of the 1960s, with their double standards and hypocrisy, they represent the decadent petty bourgeoisie and their rotten moral values in the play. The family, the Onorans, organize a fake wedding ceremony, but when Ali hears about all this, he comes to rescue Zilha. When Ali confesses to her that he has not murdered her uncle, but used the gilded reputation of being a murderer, Zilha believes in him, unlike Pejin. Zilha believes in him, and they decide to marry. This is where Zilha's story diverts from Pejin's in Singh's play. However, Jafar the Maniac, the real murderer of Zilha's uncle, appears and challenges Ali to fight, as Ali has stolen his reputation and become a hero instead of him. And here is the stage direction. Quote, they struggle, a pistol shot, Jafar falls dead. Unlike Old Mahan, Jafar never arises. Ali kills him and has to return to prison, this time for a crime he has really committed. While Christie leaves the public house, quote from the play, as a gallant captain, Ali leaves the shanty town and the stage in handcuffs in the accompaniment of the chorus singing the Ballad of Ali of Keshan. Zilha, like Pejin, is left behind once again as a trapped rural woman in the slums of a big city. At the end of the play, Sherife, the toilet cleaner woman, delivers the moral of the story. A myth is but an opium for the green to eat and swallow. Haldun Taner, in the Ballad of Ali of Keshan, adopted Singh's play into the Turkish context and presented the Turkish people of the 1960s, their lives, mentality, and morality. In other words, like Singh, Taner realistically brought Turkish people onto stage without idealizing or romanticizing his characters, using the techniques of traditional Turkish orta oyunu, the theater in the round, in the form of a Brechtian epic element. Also, like Singh, he put a special emphasis on the personal dilemmas of dwellers who struggle to find a way to escape. Haldun Taner's synthesis of Irish national dramatic formula, Brecht, and the traditional Turkish theater initiates a new national dramatic syntax in the Turkish theater of the 1960s, and this not only makes him one of the pioneers of Turkish national theater, but also a role model for the younger generations of playwrights in Turkey. Taner, instead of performing the translated texts of European playwrights, sought out new theatrical models to discuss the social, moral, and political conflicts of Turkish people, their way of life, manners, dreams, and aspirations. While doing this, he resorted to traditional Turkish theatrical devices in the way Singh resorted to Celtic literary traditions. Thematically, Haldun Taner rewrites Singhian themes in a Turkish cultural context and deals with the conflicts of Turkish people who were torn apart by a constantly changing set of values in a rapidly developing and changing country. Like Singh, Taner aims to hold a mirror up to nation. Christopher Murray's, this is a homage to Christopher Murray, his expression, Irish theatre, a mirror up to nation, and its strengths and weaknesses, its constantly changing values, etc. Haldun Taner rewrites Singhian characters living in peripheries, the clash between illusion and reality in their isolated world, and how class and gender dynamics of society, as well as social conditions and conditioning, determine the individual's fate in the Turkish context. The result is a culturally specific, highly original contribution to Turkish theater, not a slavish emulation or imitation. Moreover, like Singh, Taner deals with his characters with deep compassion without judging or blaming them for their vanities, weaknesses, or moral values. Another theme that links Singh and Taner is their critical stance against the blindness of ordinary people to their reality, and thus the production of social heroes or fake heroes or scapegoats. This is observed in Singh's The Playboy of the Western World and also in Taner's play. And I think the roots of this goes back to Brecht's Galileo. Both of them, I think, were influenced by Brecht, because in Brecht's play, The Life of Galileo, when a follower says to Galileo, "Unhappy the land that has no heroes," Galileo replies, "No, unhappy the land that is in need of heroes." In the Playboy of the Western World, Singh took the richness of rural Irish experience as a subject matter, resorted to the tradition of tall tale, used the language that the common people use, and thus created a small but real world that is also very poetic. Besides, as Robert Welch points out, in the context of Irish drama, heroism itself, especially heroism associated with violence, is one of Singh's major themes when it is used against an oppressive force, unquote. Similarly, Haldun Taner resorted to the rich living experience and language of Turkish people with their contradictory impulses of rebelliousness, irreverence, materialism, myth-making, spirituality, creating fake heroes, and also a deep conservatism. Taner rewrote Christy Mahon's story, taking Ali of Keshan's violent fake heroism in the center of the play to give voice to the social and political conflicts of the working classes living in a poor urban periphery and isolated shanty town, Sineklida. Fly Mountain is a representative in Haldun Taner's play of those crucial times of social, political, and cultural changes in Turkey. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Dear Professor, I thank you. We thank you. It was like a rhyme, you know. Thank you very much. So, if you please accept some questions from the participants, dear participants. I would like to call the audience, the participants, to ask questions to you, if you please accept, Professor. Dear all, thank you for your being participants for today. And now it is the time for having some questions to the Professor Dr. Gülşen Sayın. If you have any question, I can help you. I can raise your hands, or anyway, I can unmute you and we can go on with questions. Enes Hocam, Enes Kavak.
Thank you very much, Gülşen Hocam, for your presentation in this topic. I want to ask a question about adaptation, the idea of adaptation, and also the relationship between adaptation and the poetic language. We know that the poetic language in Irish theater is an important element. How it is translated into Turkish theater? I mean, when we adapt or appropriate a text from another culture, and when we try to adapt it in a poetic way, how do you think that we can, or Haldun Taner in a sense, in this play to keep this quality, this element in his adaptation?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. This is a wonderful question. Sync created a poetic language by playing with the syntax of Hiberno English, the dialect, the Irish dialect. And in the words and sentences of Christy Mahon, in fact, we see this poetry. There is musicality there. Haldun Taner, I think, here used the verse form in the words of the chorus. When the chorus speaks, you see the verse form. In the slides, you have already seen this. And there is musicality there. There is music there. And originally, the Ballad of Ali of Keshan is a musical cabaret. So maybe this is the reason why Haldun Taner produced this play or reperformed this play as a cabaret, as a musical play. And this can be again the reason of why he used the verse form in the words of the chorus. When the chorus speaks, we can hear the song of sing. In fact, I think this is a sort of singing parallel in the play.
Thank you very much for the answer. Maybe I can contribute a little bit to your answer. That the acculturation, the process of acculturation, probably are exceeded by this, the link between the original and the adaptation. That the poetic language finds a kind of link between two plays. you know, to Irish culture, because it was the original and it was translated in a sense into our culture. And this element gives a psychological effect also on, you know, this musical play, and possibly Haldun Taner's play at this element to the play as a musical comedy in a sense.
Definitely, yes.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Thank you, Enes Hocam. Kübra Ural Özbey Hocam.
Hi, Gülşen Hocam. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question in relation to your recent book on the topic of globalization. Because while talking about the translocation of Irish drama within Turkish drama, also your ideas came to my mind. And can we also evaluate on this play in relation to the term globalization? Yeah, yes. That is my question. Thank you.
Yes.
Dear Professor?
I just said yes. It's definitely a beautiful example of localization. Yes.
Okay. I thought it was a kind of misconnection. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Zeki Hocam.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Gülşen Hocam.
Thank you.
It's been a very long time since I last studied theater. So forgive me if I sound ignorant on the topic of discussion here. And certain things might also go unnoticed by me, and forgive me for that too. But what I want to know is if this adaptation of Sing, or Haldun Taner's play as an adaptation of Sing's play, whether it is a widely agreed and acknowledged fact among the community of Turkish literature academics. Is this now a widely agreed fact, or is this our interpretation of Haldun Taner, or our perhaps guessing that Taner might have been inspired by Sing? This is what I wanted to know. If so, if it is now a widely accepted, acknowledged, agreed fact that there are very important similarities between the two plays, then we might somehow register it somewhere, right? We might somehow mention it worldwide. What do you say?
In fact, I've been working on this affinity between Haldun Taner and Sing, not only in this play. For example, Haldun Taner's other play, Dışarıdakiler, The Outsiders, there is again a very strong affinity between one of Sing's plays, the Well of the Saints, yes, the Well of the Saints, and Dışarıdakiler, very similar themes. But in general, the academics do not agree with this. I mean, I have already worked on this, and there is the book published by Yapı Kredi Yayınları. The editor is Kerem Karaboğa, and the title of the book is Haldun Taner'le Yaşamak. And there, in Turkish, in detail, I just talked about the similarities. There are some sentences which are 100% Singian sentences, but most of the Turkish academics take this as a business of pride. I mean, they say, no, Haldun Taner hasn't imitated Sing. I'm not talking about imitation. His works are not imitations. That's why I started with the theory of adaptation. And no, in the adaptation theory, the most important thing is this: the second text should have a new life of its own, and it should contribute to the local culture, the local theater. And we see this in Haldun Taner's play. But I'll keep going on. I will just keep saying the same thing. There are very serious similarities.
Do we have any information whether Haldun Taner during his lifetime ever mentioned any inspiration?
I've been to Haldun Taner Museum in Istanbul. I live very close to the museum, and many times I wanted to see Demet Taner, but I couldn't manage this. She is going to call me because I just want to know in Taner's personal library whether there is this book or not, or some books. I want to see his personal library. In Haldun Taner Museum, unfortunately, we don't see his personal library. There are some posters, brochures, but not his personal books. I just want to see his personal library. So
there's nothing wrong if he was inspired by Singh. Because
there's nothing wrong with it.
Brand new plays in the context of Turkish life, like Lezistrata being Şalvar Davası, other examples apart from Haldun Taner.
Yes, Medya as Kurban.
But we all know that Şalvar Davası is an adaptation of Lezistrata, and we just accept this, and there is nothing wrong with accepting this sort of an effect.
I just want to add something. The ballad was translated into German, English, Russian, French, and it was performed in England, Germany, Russia, everywhere in Europe, and especially in England, it was received very well. And in Germany, when it was performed, one of the German directors in a review said that this Turkish writer and director and producer and scholar Haldun Taner taught us how to use Brechtian theater. He said.
Ayşegül Yüksel, I checked it while I was listening to you. Somehow, very surprisingly, never mentioned any Singhian impact on Haldun Taner, but she mentioned Brecht. But especially in this play section in the book, Ayşegül Hoca would have noticed it, and it is to a great surprise that she didn't mention it. And listening that sort of resemblance from you was a great delight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dear Professor Dr. Deniz Bozer,
Thank you, dear Gülşen, for this very meticulous comparison. I really enjoyed listening to it. Despite the similarities, I would just like to reiterate that, you know, even if the play, even if the ballad has been triggered or inspired by Singh's play, The Playboy of the Western World, I personally feel that it's even a better and more forceful text in its political, overt political background, because we don't, like you said, we don't have so much socio-political references in Singh's play. So in its political nature, I believe this is a better play. Also in its representation of the women characters, Zilha and Pegin. Zilha is a far cry from Pegin. She's so lively, colorful, and also in the presentation of the protagonists Ali and Christie. I would say the same for Ali. Unlike Christie, he has an agency. He's a more colorful and forceful character, but he also has agency, unlike Christie. So I would say that even if Taner was inspired by this play, it's not a shortcoming. He could have, most probably he did. I'm not sure, but his books, his library could be at Istanbul University. You might need to check, I don't know. He might have donated it there. Anyway, so I'd like to say that Taner really took a big step in contributing to Turkish theater, because afterwards he had an impact almost at the same time on Sermet Can, Ayak Bacak Fabrikası, and of course Vasfi Öngören. So he really did encourage or inspire these Turkish writers to write in the epic tradition, epic theater tradition. And he presented also another, sorry, I forgot to mention it. Another powerful point that I'd like to add is on Taner's behalf. It's the representation of the crowd, the shantytown crowd, the Sinekli Dağ crowd. The dwellers there are much more, although they're all stereotypes like the villagers in the Playboy of the Western world, they are more colorful, much more humorous, and they contribute more, I think, to the play, except with the exception of Widow Quinn in the other play. So yes, inspired or not, I think he did a great job, and he even he contributed this technique to the Turkish theater, and he ameliorated the original text. Thank you once again. It was a pleasure listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Deniz Hocam. Thank you very much.
Evrim Hocam.
Thank you. Gülşen Hocam, thank you very much for this very, very interesting talk. And thank you very much for your energy. You know, I spent all my weekend and today reading exam papers, and you really elevated my spirits, and I'm delighted. Thank you very much. And Deniz Hocam, it's very good to see you. I have a question.
You too, Evrim Hocam. Thank you so much. It's great seeing all of you.
The way Haldun Taner, in a way, adapted the Irish stereotypes as well, turning them into Turkish. And I've noticed that you used the English translation of Keshan Ali. And I've realized that the English translation is perhaps more culturally specific, or perhaps definitely more racially specific than the Turkish one. How did the foreign audiences react to that? Have you read any reviews, or have you read the whole translation? How do you think it works out that way in the translation?
Nüvit Özdoğru is the translator of the text, and he himself is an actor, and he was an actor and a producer, so he was a man of theater, and that's why the translation is, I mean, it doesn't smell translation. It is a sort of cultural translation, and I just deliberately included the English and the Turkish versions, and you can see how the Turkish humor, how the Turkish slang was translated into English, and the play was performed in this version, Nüvit's translation, in London, in Corbett Theatre, and one of the most important critics in The Guardian says the Turkish director directed. By the way, some of the actors were English, some of them were Turkish, and the newspaper critic says that the Turkish director directed his Turkish and English actors very well. We see that Turkish theater now is a worldwide international theater. So this is a beautiful evaluation of the play. And again, according to the adaptation theory, it's a proof, because the adaptation theory insists on the national contribution of the new text to the local culture. And this is what Haldun Taner's play is doing, has done, and still is doing.
Thank you very much, Ocak.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Professor. Any question?
Hakan Hocam, can I have a...
Please.
Thank you very much, Gülşen Hocam. We feel privileged to have hosted you today as TDM. Thank you very much for this great talk. I have a very small question, actually a little bit drawing upon Zeki Hoca's question. Okay, we said that this is an adaptation play. Okay, we can maybe work on this a little bit more. But Hocam, it is sometimes controversial, you know, how do we differentiate an adaptation and appropriation? Maybe can you a little bit clarify the differentiation between these conceptual tools a little bit?
In fact, that's why I use the umbrella term rewriting, because there's not much difference between adaptation and appropriation. When we say adaptation, it has different associations, film adaptations, for example, different intersemiotic adaptations. So appropriation, adaptation, transplantation, acculturation, at the end of the day, they mean the same. This way or that way, they mean the same. I prefer using adaptation when I talk about film adaptations. For this particular play, I prefer using rewriting, because I think adaptation is closer to emulation, maybe, but rewriting means rewriting something for a different society, for a different culture, at a different time. And I just want to add something. This is not related to your question, Pelin'cim. There is another famous interpretation, rewriting of this play, Mustafa Matura's The Playboy of the West Indies. And whereas Haldun Taner's play is today internationally unknown, that play is being performed both in Broadway and London, and even the Abbey performed Mustafa Matura's play. But Haldun Taner's play is not that famous right now. In the past, yes. In the 60s and 70s in Europe, yes, it was very well received. So, okay.
Thank you again, dear Professor. Any question? Can I read the question, Professor? There's
no,
a question.
I can't see.
Okay. Let me read then, as is known.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Yashar has a question, I see.
Sorry. Then.
First of all, thank you, Gülşen Hocam, for your presentation, and also
Welcome.
thank you again for your positive energy.
Welcome.
Nowadays, we need people who laugh, who smile more, as there are a lot of events that make us sad, unfortunately. And first of all, I want to say something to Zekiye Hoca, and then I'm going to ask you a question, if it's possible. Zekiye Hoca said there is no Haldun Taner, or there are no Haldun Taners to write or perform such plays. Excuse me. I want to say or rewrite her sentence as there are a lot of Haldun Taners who write, who can perform, but there is no love to support them, unfortunately. And before asking the question, I want to say my idea, as I have been writing plays. I call myself as a playwright as well. My idea is that all words include emotions. Always I say this to my students too. As the words include emotions, it is difficult to rewrite or adapt or translate whatever you say, a source text into the target language. My first question is, what do you think of this? And another sentence, which is claimed by me, it is possible to write what is said, but it is really difficult to rewrite what is meant or what is aimed to be felt. The things which are hidden behind the sentences are more important than the sentences on the stage or on the scene. Do you think that in your reading process, my first question is, have you encountered such difficulties or such problematic situations in your reading, in your reading on the translated texts? Have you seen any sentences which cannot transfer the aimed emotions written by the writer of the original text?
Is the question?
Yes, my last question. My last question is this: Have you seen such problems or such problematic sentences which cannot transfer the emotions aimed by the writer of the source text, which are translated by any other writer or translator, whatever you say?
Now you are asking something about translation theory or creative writing.
It's not quite about translation theory. Adaptations also have such difficulties in
yes.
Transferring the emotions, the feelings, and I claim that all the literary works are based on the emotions.
Yes.
Whatever we write, whatever we say, we try to transfer the emotions, what we feel in our heart, to the target audience. And it is really important for me, for the plays which are adapted. Do you see any problems, or have you seen any problematic lines or sentences or such points in Haldun Taner's plays which are adapted into English or German or French?
Now, first I'll talk about Nüvit Özdoğru's translation. Now, in the 1980s, there is a revolution in translation studies, and the target text-oriented translation suddenly became very popular, not word-for-word translation. Although Nüvit translated this text before this cultural turn in translation studies. Still, it's a very culture-specific translation. I like this translation because some, for example, Irish sense of humor was translated into Turkish by Haldun in the sense of Turkish sense of humor. And in Nüvit's English translation, Turkish humor was translated, or let me say, acculturated to English for English audiences. So Haldun Taner's is not a translation, it is an acculturation, it is a rewriting, but your question includes the English translation of the play, and it is a target culture-oriented translation. And that's why maybe I like it very much.
Thank you.
In translation, I'm talking from experience. I mean, there is nothing untranslatable. The translation finds a way, this way or that way. At the end, he or she finds a way to re-express, I'm not using the word translate, to re-express the meaning, the emotions in another language for another culture.
Thank you.
Well, I think it was the last of the series of questions. Gülşen Hocam, I cannot see anyone who wants to ask any questions. Thank you very much. I thank you very much. As Theatre and Drama Network, we thank you very much. It was an honor to be with you, and it was a great, I don't know, it was a great session for me, and I'm sure for the participants. Well, before closing the session, we have a tradition, Hocam. We are waving our hands and say goodbye to us.
Yeah, before this, I'd like to thank everybody there. It was my pleasure to be here. Yeah. I've seen my old friends. I've seen Canım Deniz Hocam. So thank you very much. Yeah. Really, it was my honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, now we can do this.
Yes, the professor. It was the first event of the TDN talks for this year. We will keep going. We will keep going on the conversations and talks in this year, and we will be very happy to see you, all of you, during our sessions. Thank you again, and I'm ending the session right now. And take care, Sayın Hocam.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Görüşmek üzere hocam.